All right, let's get started because I know everyone has a busy day. Good morning. My name is Stuart Gamm. I'm a consultant here at CriticalEdge Group in Hamden, Connecticut. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar on what's new in General Ledger, Bank Rec, and Analytical Accounting in Microsoft Dynamics GP 2013. This is the 7th webinar in our series of 10, highlighting what's new in GP 2013. This is being presented based on the initial market release of GP 2013. So if they make any changes in subsequent service packs, obviously what I tell you today may be subject to some small change. I'm going to try to keep this under 30 minutes. I know we're all busy, but if you do have to leave early, please don't hesitate to do so. You won't be hurting my feelings. All participants are muted. There is a section at the bottom of your meeting window to submit questions, and please feel free to do so at your leisure so you don't forget about the question that you have in mind. I will address them at the end of the session, but you can submit them at any time. Our agenda is very simple. I'm just going to review, or I guess it's really preview, the highlights. Then we'll go right into a demo, and then we will do a Q&A session where I answer your questions that you submit online. So let's go into the review of the highlights. Okay, so here is a list of what we're going to cover. There is additional reconciliation functionality in prior versions of GP. You can reconcile payables and receivables to your GL. They've added additional functionality in general, and on top of which they've also added the ability to reconcile your inventory and your bank rec, your checkbooks, to the general ledger. So if you have issues in those two areas, this could be very useful. They've enhanced the multi-currency translation options, and this pertains specifically to using Management Reporter, which you'll have no choice but to use in 2013. FRX will no longer be an option when you upgrade to 2013. Now, there is a conversion of your FRX report, so one does not have to reinvent the wheel, but FRX itself will no longer be available. Unit account handling. They've added the ability to handle unit accounts like a P&L account when you close a year. So you can actually reset to zero on specified unit accounts when you do a year-end close. Very minor point, but if you ever used it in GP, there was a link called FRX, which opened FRX directly from GP. Now that FRX is no longer available, they've renamed that to Management Reporter. Batch approvers are tracked in the database. If you use batch approval, where someone has to, generally speaking, use a password to approve a batch before it can be posted, and in prior versions that was not tracked. From now on, in 2013, the user who actually approves a batch is part of the database and can be retrieved. There's some year-end close enhancements we'll go over. They've enhanced the journal inquiry window, primarily to include history years, and we'll take a look at that. There is some additional EFT and electronic banking functionality, which we'll take a quick look at. There is control over voiding clear checks. I know I've had a number of clients in the past who have voided a check they have already cleared from the in the bank rec, which intuitively doesn't make a lot of sense and is generally an error. They've implemented some ability to not do that. Linked SSRS reports, that's SQL Server Reporting Service reports. There is a direct link from some Windows to reports, and we'll take a look at that. Analytical accounting, which I'll refer to for the most part as AA, is linked to fixed assets. I'm just going to mention this one because I covered this in length in the fixed asset webinar I did a couple weeks ago. But just be advised, if you missed that analytical accounting, or AA, is now linked to fixed assets. Also on the AA front, you can copy AA information if you copy a journal entry, a sales invoice, or sales document or a purchase order. So that's the additional AA functionality. Okay, so let's go into our demo. And let me switch screens for that. Okay. And let me get to my script here so I can make sure I do everything I want to do. Okay. So let's first look at the setup windows just to see what's changed there. And if this is the first time you're seeing 2013, this is the new area page. And I'll just do this. So this is how it opens up. We have all your sections are spread across the screen. If you want to maximize a particular section, and right now I want to maximize setup, I can click on this, and that section is maximized, and the other sections are put on another part of the screen, which you can actually tell it which part, the right, the left, the bottom, so that actually is user definable. Okay, so let's look at the GL setup window. There's one minor change here. I mentioned when going through the new features that they have added functionality to the GL reconcile, which once again used to be just AP and AR, but now it does bank rec and inventory as well. And it's actually saved in the database. So there's a next number that you have to set up, which typically you start at 1. I've done 3 of these in preparing for this webinar, so I'm up to number 4. So that is really the only change on the of note on the GL setup window. Another setup change I want to mention to you is on the multi-currency setup. And here we see that, once again, in Management Reporter, unlike FRX, all the FX information, the translations, etc., comes directly from GP. So the good thing is, if you're using FRX now to do multi-currency financials, is you don't have to maintain that information in 2 places. What they've added in this version is the ability to have 3 methods for your average calculation. So if you're using average rates for on your financials for translating foreign currency financials, you have 3 methods to do so. You can specify an exchange table to use that has a rate you want to use for an average rate for that particular time frame. Rate average is the straightforward mathematical average during the time frame. So if I have a rate, for of 150 for 29 days and a rate of 140 for 1 day, my rate average will be a straightforward adding the 150 plus the 140 dividing by 2. So that will give a rate average of 1.45. Rate stay average is a weighted average. So in that example, the 150, which would have 29 times the weight of the 140 in calculating the average. So that essentially works out to a daily average. It's a weighted rate average. Okay, let's take a look at the unit account card. So I'm going to go to cards, and I'm going to go to unit accounts. A couple things different here. You have a checkbox here that says clear balance during year-end close. In other words, if you check that box, when you do your year-end, whatever's in this account will be reset to 0, just like a P&L account is. I know I have a client, or at least one client, who was tracking medical visits during the year, and because unit accounts did not reset, I had to do some manipulation on the financial statements to get the yearly amount as opposed to the year-to-date, the amount that included the beginning balance. Now, by checking this box, which is on an account-by-account basis, so this is not across the board, but you could tell it which unit accounts you want to clear the balance for during the year-end close. The other thing that's new on this screen is the view of both the net change and the period balance at the same time. On prior versions, this was, you could see one or the other at any given time, and there was a radio button to toggle between the two. Now you can see both at the same time. So that's a unit account. And just to close the loop on something I mentioned earlier, if I go to reports, you see now this says Management Reporter. Now when I click on this, it's going to open Management Reporter. And this is something, the first time you do, you have to put in the path to Management Reporter. But once you do that, it will remember that, and it'll open Management Reporter from that link, which used to say FRX. So now I'm going to close that because I don't really want to do anything in Management Reporter today. Okay, let's go to the Transaction tab, or window, and let's look at our batches. I don't have a batch approval turned on, but you see down here, if I did, when I go to a batch, this approved box would be checked, it would be enabled, and I could check it. I'd have to check it to approve the batch, and typically there would be a password associated with that as well. So if I was approving this batch, I would check the box, my user ID would go into this cell right here, and then the batch could be posted. The problem was that user ID was not saved. So, you could approve the batch, but an auditor going back in time would not know who did that. Now that information is saved in the table. However, having said that, unfortunately, it is not, SmartList is not caught up with that. So that information is not available in SmartList right now. So in order to, if you do need that information, you will probably have to write a custom report or a SmartList builder to pull that in from the table, because once again, that is in the table but not in SmartList at the moment. Okay, and that applies to any batch approval you do, payables, receivables, etc. Okay. Now let's talk about the reconcile to GL, which has some substantial changes. That's under routines, and reconcile to GL. So a few things here. First of all, you see here the I'm on reconciliation number 4, which you may recall from the setup window is my next reconciliation number. There's also some summary information here. If I were to pick a previously started reconciliation, I get some summary information here right on the window. So it's saving this information. I could drill back and open up the associated Excel spreadsheet that was created from that prior reconciliation. Now this may depend on the version of Excel that you have, but there also, on the spreadsheet, there are hyperlinks. So if I click on, and this is a payables one, and obviously what you can hyperlink to may vary from one to the other, and this is just a potential security window, concern window. So this will actually open up the vendor maintenance, or I can click on the document number, and it'll open up an inquiry on the document number. On the GL side, I'm sorry, it just keeps toggling off of that. I can drill back on the journal entry or on the account maintenance window. And obviously, if you're doing receivables or bank rec or what have you, it'll be slightly, the application side or the sub-ledger side will have different drop-down hyperlinks to different windows. So let me go back to GP. And I'll go back to I guess I closed that window, the reconcile window. So what you see here is if you have a path, and that path will remember the path you used the last time you did a reconciliation for that particular series. So if I go to receivables, I've never done a reconcile for receivables, so there's no path. Once I put that path, it will remember the path. It also creates a file in that path showing what the reconciliation is, PM to GL, the number, and the date. And I'm not sure why it has that date. It's 03/27. That is the month end and year end for the spreadsheet. So this is the 4th reconciliation, and it's for March 2017, PM to GL. One thing I want to point out on a very specific to the bank rec, which I thought I had here. Okay, let's do the bank rec. Let's do a bank rec reconciliation. Let's see, do I have one here? So when I open the bank rec spreadsheet, if you're familiar with the receivables and bank rec modules, when you do cash receipts, you can do multiple cash receipts that make up one deposit. So we see here, we have one deposit totaling $28,000, and here are the individual cash receipts. So it actually shows it both ways, and you can collapse it on the spreadsheet. This is automatic, So here's the deposit, individual cash receipts involved, and the total of the deposit. So it does show you both the cash receipt aspect of it and the deposit aspect of it automatically on the spreadsheet. Let me close these spreadsheets because I don't need them anymore. Let's just go back to GP. Okay. So let's look at the year-end closing window, which is once again still under routines. And if I go to year-end closing, a couple things to show you here. On prior versions, if you did a year-end closing, it automatically deleted inactive accounts that had no balance. So if you had an inactive account, the balance was 0, which doesn't mean you didn't have prior activity, but the balance is 0, it would remove it. Now you have the ability with this checkbox to not remove them, and you can do either all inactive accounts or just inactive accounts with budget amounts. So if you create an account for future use, you put a budget in, but you use it, you keep it as inactive because you don't want it used until the next year, you have the ability to just maintain those accounts when you do a year-end close, or you can do all inactive accounts, in which case none will be removed, regardless of whether they have a budget or not. The other thing that's new on this window, and I'm going to actually close the year, is there's a progress bar down here. So if I click on Close Year, okay, I turn on AA, so I can't do that, but there's a progress bar that shows you exactly where in the process you are. So, and just as a reminder, if you happen to get an error during the year-end close, which I don't believe I've ever gotten in my many years here at CriticalEdge, your only recourse is to go to a backup. So if you're doing a year-end close, you need to make sure you have a good backup before you do it. That is your own. There's no plan B in case of an error. Okay, let's go to the journal entry inquiry. So I'm going to go to my inquiry section and go to journal entry inquiry. Now previously, all you could inquire on, and I never did understand this, was journal entries from open years. Now you can inquire from any year, open or closed. If you know the journal entry number, you could just type that in, and it's going to bring in the journal entry with that number from the most recent year. So I put in journal entry 9. The most recent use of that journal entry was in 2014, so it automatically brought that in. I didn't have to select a year in advance. If I go to my journal entry lookup, I have an ability to look at either open years or closed year journal entries, historical year journal entries. Or, of course, I can just pick the year first. Let me delete that. Pick the year first. And then go look. And unfortunately, that doesn't impact the search, but you can still put the year first. You see, as you see, that there actually shows you list entries from all open years, regardless of the fact that you've put a year in here in advance. So that's the journal entry inquiry, which has been expanded to include history years. I'm going to switch gears for one moment and go to purchasing. And I'm going to go to void historical transaction. So I'm going through the steps of voiding a check. And I'm going to void check 10555, or at least start the ball rolling to do that. And two things. One, it says right here, reconciled, yes. So even before I do anything else, I know, if I happen to see, that this check has already been reconciled, which means it's been cleared. The bank, it's been cleared in a bank reconciliation. If I check the box, it gives me a warning that this payment has been reconciled. Do I want to continue? So I can continue, but most likely I wouldn't want to. So if you inadvertently clear a clear check, you have no one to blame but yourself going forward, because the system is doing something to try to stop you from doing it, although it doesn't totally stop you from doing it. At least it gives you a warning. Let me go back to the financial tab and let me discuss EFT and electronic banking. EFT, I'm just going to mention that there are additional formatting options available to you. So if you have a problem doing EFTs because the prior version didn't support a particular format that your bank needs, that's too specific to get into in this webinar, but there are additional options available. So if you have had that issue, you can contact us specifically, and we can tell you if the issue you've had has been addressed. What I do want to show you is on electronic reconcile. There is a new format option called basically BAI, Banking Administration, and I forgot what the I stands for, but it's a predetermined format. So if I go ahead and create a format, and let me just actually clear that and do a new one. So I see two options: user define, where you can define the format exactly as you need it to be, or BAI. And if I do BAI, it comes in with a predetermined format, which would be able to use one of these BAI specified files and import it without further modification. So if that's the nature of the file you get out of your bank, it would be that simple to configure a import for it. I'm going to go to the checkbox maintenance. I'm going to go back to cards briefly. And what I want to show you here is not really specific to this module, but here's an example of how it works. There's this printer icon on here, and I can assign SSRS reports. So here are all the SSRS reports, most of which will not have anything to do with a checkbook, but I can insert it into this side, and then when I can print any number of reports that I have attached to this window when I select it. Now, these SSRS reports generally have parameters, and it will pass that checkbook as a parameter. So this particular one only has a one parameter, so it's actually going to print the report directly. It takes a moment to load. And I actually, you know what? I don't want to do that because I picked the wrong checkbook. Let me go to a different checkbook and do that. So here is, and it defaults in what today's date, and the activity and the test company is in the future. So let me just reset that so you see we have a little bit of activity showing here. So this is, you can see it passed the parameter of Uptown Trust directly from the window I was in. On the other hand, if I go to this one, which is a default one because it's the one on top, this has a number of parameters. It's put Uptown Trust in as the parameter for the checkbook ID, but it still gives you the opportunity to select other parameters. And that window, that ability is on other windows, such as account. One that's relevant in the GL section is the GL account maintenance window. So it's not on every window, but it is on a couple windows here. It'll work the same way, of course, on any window. Excuse me. Okay, so let's talk AA, Analytical Accounting. What they've added here, in addition to the link to the fixed assets, which I'm not going to show today, is they've added functionality to their what they call their copier series. And the copier series is the ability to copy transactions. And specifically on the GL side, it would be GL transactions. So I'm going to actually switch companies briefly and go to transactions and general. And I'm going to hit copy. And now I see this checkbox that says copy analytical accounting information, which I can select the check or not. If I do check it, and I copy an entry that had AA on it, what we'll see is the AA information is copied with the rest of the transaction. So you see I have a project here that came in when I copied the transaction. So that's new. It's also available if you copy a sales order document or a purchase order processing, a PO. So in those three windows, that's available. The other thing I want to mention relative to AA is sort of a preemptive thing. If I go to maintenance, analytical accounting check links, they have made this in prior versions totally didn't work. They have made improvements on it, and it does work better, but they are actually suggesting Microsoft in their own webinar series is actually suggesting that you don't use this until further testing is done. So they're still not happy with it. So I'm telling you now to continue not to use it even though it is available. So if you are using AA and you have AA issues, do not use the AA check links until they come out with a service pack in which they tell you that it's okay to do. They are, once again, Microsoft is itself suggesting that you don't use this functionality. Excuse me again. And that really is everything I got in terms of the demo. So let me thank you for your time and attention. Hope to see you at our next session, which is what's new in sales order processing and receivable. That will be next Wednesday. So now I'd like to see if we have any questions. So I'm going to go to my meeting panel and see if anyone has, and I see there are some questions. That's a good thing. So let me see what we got here. Okay, I've got to make this window bigger because I can't see it. Okay, some people here thought we could keep our current FRX with GP 2013. Once again, the answer is no. FRX can no longer be used with GP 2013. In 2010, you could use both FRX and Management Reporter. But there is a conversion tool. So we can convert your FRX reports to Management Reporter, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you cannot use FRX with GP 2013. And that seems to be the next question is essentially the same thing, and so I hope I've clarified that. You do need to use Management Reporter with GP 2013. And that seems to be the last of the questions. So I'll give you another moment or two to ask any more questions that you might think of. If you have any questions that are very specific and really beyond the scope of a webinar such as this, I'll be happy to answer that privately if you just make sure you give me your email. Or you have my email on the meeting. You should see that, stuart.gam@criticaledgegroup.com. Please feel free to send me an email directly. So I'll just keep the meeting open for another moment or two to see if I get any new questions. Otherwise, I bid everyone a good day. Okay, I do see a couple more questions that have come in. Okay, good. Okay, okay. Is there any improvement in distribution multi-level query wizards? No, the AA improvements which I mentioned, which is the copier series, the ability to copy AA is the extent, and of course the fixed asset link is the extent of the AA improvements. Someone also started typing something that just says for analytical accounting, so I think someone might have missed part of their question. So if they want to resubmit that, I'd be glad to address it. But just to make sure I'm not missing any questions. Okay, I'm still here, so feel free to submit more questions. Okay, I don't seem to be getting any new questions, so I'll think I'll close the webinar. Once again, thank you for attending, and we hope to have you back next week for our receivables and sales order processing webinar. Have a good day, everybody.